I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
All right, everyone, this is Lisa. Lisa, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Lisa. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in my late 40s. I am of European and Persian heritage, though read and experience the world completely as a white person. I am a single mom by choice to an amazing 15-year-old, and I love to make art.
What's your jokes?
Oh, I actually only know 2 jokes.
Oh,
Okay. So you ready? The first one?
I'm ready.
So a person walks into the library, and the librarian says, "Can I help you?" And the person says, "Yeah, I'd like hamburgers, french fries, and a soda." And the librarian says, "This is a library." And the person goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'd like hamburgers, french fries, and a soda." Do you know Star Wars?
Not the way you're thinking, no.
Okay. Well, then it won't make any sense. So I'll just skip it.
Are you sure? You can throw it in there. It may make sense to somebody else who's listening.
Okay. What's the temperature of the inside of a tauntaun?
What?
Lukewarm.
Oh, okay. I get that. Lisa and I met, how many years ago now?
8, 7, 8, a long time ago.
Yes. Oh, that's so crazy.
I know.
Where we worked at the same school, and the first memory I have of you, it was me and another black man coworker, and we would have these intense conversations about education all the time in our break room. And anytime people walked in, they'd be like, "Oh, there they go again," and then walk out. And anytime white people walked in, they would absolutely just turn around and not engage with us. And then one day you walked in, you had your lunch, and you sat down. And I just remember we looked at you and you were like, "Hey, I'm Lisa. What are y'all talking about?" And it was just such a, that memory is just.
It was such a good conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciated that it was like a real conversation happening. And my first memory of you is actually before that, because you worked on the 3rd floor and I was on the 1st floor, but the copy room was on the 1st floor, and I'd gone in to make copies, and some of your handouts were in the copier, right? This happens. And I was like, what is this? It was amazing, like, questions about Black trans activists and culture and identity. And I was like, who is doing this with our middle schoolers, and why can she not be teaching literally everything? Because it was so, it was that amazing mix of like incredibly positive representation with really deep analysis and ELA skills. And I was like, this is what I want every teacher in teacher college to like go and look at. This is how you do a handout. So I will say part of why I sat down at that lunch was like, I want to get to know this woman.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I was definitely known as Dreme. You have stuff in the copier. So Lisa, thank you so much for stopping by my podcast.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes. And I wanted to ask, how did you get into education? Did you always know you wanted to be an educator?
I did not know at all that I wanted to be an educator, and I fell into it in two different ways. So the first way was the first real summer job I had was working at this museum. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. In New Haven, it was in Hampton, but basically New Haven, that did construction classes for kids, and mostly kids that we would now say had ADHD or dyslexia or learning disabilities. But this was late 80s, early 90s when a lot of that stuff wasn't diagnosed, wasn't being talked about a lot. We didn't have a lot of understanding. And it was this amazing, it was basically like makerspace before there were makerspaces. And I loved it. I didn't think that was teaching. I thought I was just being a camp counselor. And now looking back, I get it was teaching, and I get that a lot of what I learned about education I first learned there. Like, you need to meet students where they are. Things should be hands-on and creative. You should give people enough structure that they like have a sense of where they're going, but then you just have to let young people be creative and they'll do amazing, amazing things. So I had that. Like, I worked there for a bunch of summers. And then in college, my first week of college, a friend of mine, I'd done like a pre-orientation program. She said, I'm doing this conflict resolution program in Boston and Cambridge schools. Do you want to be a part of it? And literally, I remember my thought process was, I should do something for the community where I live. I'm a Quaker, so I should do something around conflict resolution. And oh my gosh, a friend is asking me to do something, and I just got here and I'm overwhelmed. So of course I'm going to say yes. And best thing I ever said yes to in college. What ended up happening is I ended up co-running the program with a good friend of mine, and we did conflict resolution, violence prevention. Really, it was like social emotional learning, but again, it was the early 90s, so we didn't have that language, in 50 to 60 elementary schools throughout Boston and Cambridge. And so it meant every week, multiple times, I was in schools, I was with young people, I was learning from these incredible teachers. Because, you know, the teachers who said yes to that were teachers who, like, understood having young adults in front of their kids was important, understood that talking about feelings and what we do when we get angry is important, and understood that their kids should have the opportunity to go and do things around the city outside of their classroom. So that made me want to be a teacher, because I loved being with the young people, and I was just so inspired by all these different teachers all over the city that I got to work with.
When you think about that as your base in education, why go into urban education? Why work with predominantly Black and brown students?
I live in the city, so one, it's important to me that teachers live in the communities where they teach. And so when I first started teaching in Boston, I was living in Dorchester, and the next few schools that I taught at were in Dorchester, because I actually wanted to see my students and their families, you know, when we weren't in school, because I think that's important. I think one of the things that Brown v. Board of Education destroyed was the ways that Black communities raised up their young people. That desegregation meant young people were taken out of their communities and were not watched over and cared for in the way that they had been. And I'm under no assumptions that I can recreate any part of that. But in talking to people about education, and I was an anthropology major, and I did a lot of my focus of my independent studies around education and how the different choices in parents' education impacted their kids' identity development. So looking at white parents of transracial adoptees, hearing parents of deaf kids, straight parents of queer kids, I knew that the choices we make for our kids around the kind of education they have can have a huge impact on who they understand themselves to be. What I didn't have in my early 20s was the analysis of maybe that means I should have actually been working in predominantly white schools and talking with white students about whiteness. And so in my early 20s, I was like, okay, where are the schools that have the greatest need? Because that's where I should put my energy. That was my orientation. So there was definitely some, I don't think it was intense white saviorism, but there was definitely a narrative of like, I went to this fancy college, I'm really smart and capable, like I'm going to bring a lot to these schools. And I did bring a lot. And part of what I brought was a lot of whiteness that wasn't in service of my kids. But I also knew from the program I'd run in college that when I showed up in classrooms and the students said, where do you go? And I said, Harvard. And they said, well, why are you here? And I was like, what's more important than your education? That there was some value in that, that the value I had with the prestige of my college, I could transfer some of that to the students by saying, you're important enough that I think I should be here. I don't think I should be someplace else. Like, I think who you are is worthy of this thing that I've learned over here, even though what I learned very quickly was almost all of my reference points for teaching kids in the city for teaching Black and brown kids were completely invalid, if not harmful. And so I had to do a lot of my own education really, really quickly.
So what does it look like to unpack whiteness with the kids that you were working with?
So it looked like all different kinds of things. It was the places where they would say and do things that I wouldn't understand. And I could tell like there was a moment of cultural disconnect because the energy that we were both bringing to the things were like so off kilter. It was like little things when a bunch of the girls were like, can I braid your hair? Can I braid your hair? I was like, it's not going to look good. They're like, no, I'm really good. I was like, no, my hair is so thin. And like, they would braid it and be like, oh no, this does not look good. And just like, but like having the space to like be playful around that too. Right. And that where there could be curiosity with me, it was about, I was a humanities teacher for a lot of my career. And so a lot of the history I had to teach was the history of oppression without acknowledging that. U.S. History 1 is genocide and enslavement and the rise of whiteness and patriarchy. And again, in the early 90s, you could kind of bring a little bit in, but like that wasn't how we were talking about it. And so I had to think about, wow, should I be standing at the front of the class when we're doing this? Am I bringing in folks from the community to talk about the really hard topics? How am I like positioning myself in this space? Not because I'm never not the authority figure in the classroom, but it's really different if when we start a unit that involves talking about the transatlantic slave trade, am I standing at the front writing on a board correcting people, or am I bringing in elders from the community to talk about the issue in a way where I'm sitting to the side? What are all those different dynamics? It was the first 2 schools I worked at, we were constantly supposed to correct kids speaking and the whole ask thing. And I was just like, this is such BS. Like, I know what you're saying. You know what I'm saying. We're having effective communication. You know what you need to write in the paper. Why do I have to correct how you're talking? But I had been trained to do that. I was expected to do that. I was evaluated on doing that. And so starting to feel the weight of what it meant when someone in a body like mine was constantly telling kids how they could talk. And where like I would push back against that and get in trouble with the administration, or I was the only openly queer teacher for a while in the school, and I was kind of tight with a small group of teachers, the other of whom were straight, and we kind of had this unspoken agreement. They would sort of push on the queer issues. They were mostly women of color. I would push on the race issues, like in terms of what was in the curriculum, in a way that then neither of us could get written off, that if they just pushed on the race issues and I just pushed on the queer issues, we could kind of get written off and be tokenized in those different ways. And so where we were working together as staff to create a more incrementally, because the school was really jacked up, a better environment for the students. And how do we bring more of who each of us is into the school, and how do we make more space for the students to be who they are?
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't.
The Chair.
A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join
The Chair.
the community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on.
The Chair.
We got you.
No stress, no strife. In the chair, the chair, the chair. All right.
Because I think about this a lot when I was working in LA and I purposely chose to live in East LA.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I was learning that the Mexican community had a lot of anti-blackness. And the fact that I was living in the neighborhood, I wasn't well received.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started working there. And then they were like, oh, she's not leaving. And I'm like, nope. And I see you at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I see you at the laundromat. And so we eventually, just my interaction with them in daily spaces, they started to recognize me as a person.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, this kid, this teacher who, looks so young is now teaching my kids. Yeah. And so maybe we should give her a chance. But I think a lot how when I meet a lot of white teachers who choose not to live in the community and they say they feel unsafe, I'm like, so what does that mean for your kids when you walk into their classroom and you're the one who is supposed to be teaching? It's something I think about a lot. So the fact that starting in the neighborhood and then working in the neighborhood, I think is, step one.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the worthiness of Harvard and highlighting that for the kids, how do you break that apart with saviorism, white saviorism? Like, how is that broken apart? Because I feel like that line is so...
Yeah. So it's all tangled up. Can I curse on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's super fucked up. Like, straight up. So first of all, the notion that Harvard is the be-all, end-all, right? Most of my professors there did not give a crap about me. I have friends who went to much less prestigious schools who had educators who were really invested in them. That's one whole thing. I think I walked out of college thinking I could do pretty much anything I wanted to do because that's what Harvard teaches you. You never have a stupid question. You're entitled to be wherever you are, and you're probably one of the smartest people in the room. Combine that with class privilege and race privilege, and woo! That's a lot. What I think helped me work through some of that is that because I'd been working in schools, I knew there was a lot I didn't know.
Okay.
I knew there was a lot that I couldn't offer my students. And I had watched teachers, both BIPOC teachers and white teachers, who I thought were exceptional at their job. And they didn't move like the people on my college campus. And they didn't act like the people on my college campus. And they did not have a savior orientation. They had a, like, I'm going to get down in there with you young people and love you unconditionally and push you hard and understand even then there might be pieces I'm missing. And so I think what was important to my students was that they knew I thought that they and their educations were really valuable and really important and worthy of my time. Yep. And that's the piece that I think could translate over. The rest of it, I was like, no. I don't think people should go there for undergrad. I don't think you get cared about or taken care of. And it's an ivory tower, right? You're removed from the rest of the world. And so when I started teaching and realized that all of my reference points, both from my own lived experience as a high school student and then as a college student, were not valued in my students, I had to go find other reference points. So I had to talk to people who were first generation in college. I read so many books by so many different authors that had different lived experiences than me. I was like, I need to understand what I'm missing. And I read a ton of books, mostly by Black authors who'd gone to predominantly white schools, just, memoirs and narratives and stuff. Because I'm like, what is it that I'm doing that I've been trained to do that I think is the right thing that is harmful, right? And sometimes my kids would tell me, sometimes my colleagues would tell me. I got a lot of it from reading these different things, but I had to move differently. But, living in the neighborhood, I had all my ninth graders over at the end of the year for a celebration in my rasty, broke down backyard, and word got out. So parents knew, not only am I here, but I want your family to come to my house. I want to share food with you. I'm not putting up anything fancy. It's not about that. And the next year, I remember one kid started acting up in class. And the other kid's like, no, this is Miss G. Don't do that. And I would get the calls sometime at midnight when a parent couldn't find their young person, wanted me to help them look for them, or when a young person would call me because they were being asked to trade sex for a ride home or clothes or whatever. And that's when I knew that I had crossed some level of line from I'm this outside person bringing my ideas about how things should be to I have shown up enough and told you I care about you enough in a way that's not about my ideas, but about what you say you need, that now we're having a real relationship. And I think there's ways still that white saviorism is going to show up in me, right? Because that stuff gets ingrained so early on.
Yeah.
And I have so many societal privileges. And I know it's bullshit too. It's bullshit. That stuff in me is bullshit. That stuff in other people is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I move in a way that says, you're the person in front of me.
Yeah.
You bring all the pieces of your culture and you're a unique person. I bring all the pieces of my culture and I'm a unique person. And how do we connect on an individual level without denying the group and societal aspects that are going on?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I constantly put myself in a different orientation than how I've been trained to be in around that stuff?
I feel like I've been coming up against this door of when I meet white queer teachers who've basically can compartmentalize their whiteness and their queerness, and the conversation of intersectionality isn't there. How were you able to open that door or basically keep it open?
Yeah. So the first school that I taught at was a suburban school. It was a middle school. I was the only out teacher in a 1,000-kid middle school. I was 22. And some parents showed up one day with a baseball bat to beat the crap out of me. And luckily, the vice principal, who happened to be I was up on the 4th floor, down on the ground floor, was a former football player, and he got them out of the building. Some of their staff came and told me. I kind of locked myself in a room for a while. My brakes were tampered with. My bike tires were slashed. Like it was a very unsafe situation. And at the same time, because I was the only out teacher in that school of 1,000 kids, and again, this is like early 90s Massachusetts or mid 90s Massachusetts, all these kids were quietly coming to me. Parents were quietly coming to me. And I had this very profound experience of some intense violence being directed at me, people showing up to keep me physically safe, understanding what it meant to be a visible only. Like there was not a week after I came out, and my students asked me, which is how I came out, because I was the only teacher in the school that would shut down when kids were saying fag to each other. What it meant to be a visible only. The challenge of that and the gifts of that, the ways that I got to support kids, the ways I got to support families, the stories that people told me that I was the only holder of in that building. And so it was such a profound lesson in what it is to be an only in a space, or a visible only, or a public only. And because I'm cisgendered, 5'4" and blonde, I'm white, and because I went to Harvard and my family's got money, so I have security, even though my life was physically threatened, beyond that, my well-being was not threatened. People believed me, people protected me, people stood up for me. And if I'd had to walk away from that job mid-year, I would have been completely fine. I had a big safety net to fall back on. All of that is true of that experience. And so I can't not hold that experience intersectionally, because if I'd had a different set of identities besides my queerness, that experience would have gone down differently. And I was so aware at the time why that experience was going out the way it was, and why I could keep going back into that building, and why I could trust people were going to keep me physically safe. That, I think, is a piece of it. And then for me, one of the horrible things about whiteness is we're taught to just be cruel to everybody else and to put our own emotional selves first at the expense of everybody else. And so that's where I use my queerness to say, okay, Lisa, when I as a white person don't know what to do in a moment, not that it's a complete parallel, but what would I want from a straight person in this moment? And that at least always gives me traction into a better way of showing up with other people. Because I don't want straight people to talk for me, to talk over me, to rescue me. I just want them to stop being so freaking heteronormative. Like it's not that complicated. And I also know, like, as a queer person, what I love when I'm in a relationship with another woman is we have to negotiate who does what in the relationship, because we don't have these roles to fall back into, and how much healthier I think that is, how much more freeing and liberating I think that is. And so that means I know the way I'm oriented as a white person is limited and the opposite of freedom. And so how do I bring that same level of conscious consent with whoever I'm in relationship with? Because I know it's just better. That's the gift of queerness, is I don't have these effed up roles to fall into when I'm in a relationship with somebody. And so it has to be a conscious choice. And so that's what whiteness does, is it limits my consciousness so much that I think it can only be this particular way that is completely jacked up for every living thing on the planet. But look, it doesn't have to be. Like, we can inhabit it differently.
The chair.
Oh, And if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Capture the Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. For me, I think the idea of the normal came from whiteness.
Right.
For me, being like I grew up, this is the way I grew up, and then I attend a private independent school, and I'm one of 5 Black kids, and I know this is a great education, and then so everything they're doing is considered the normal in this space.
Right.
And then I go home and I'm like, okay, well, if that is normal, then what is mine?
Right. Right. Or even that we have to call that a great education when it denied so much of not just your personhood, but your people's personhood.
Mm-hmm. Like I had a great education at BB&N, but still I still think about all the little things. I was talking about this the other day where I got accepted into BB&N. I'm a smart kid.
Right.
I was a smart kid. And I was like, no, I just worked hard. That's how I got into BB&N. However, there were 2 of us from Roxbury. So the biracial Black-white teacher came to our open house, came to talk to us. And then I had to be interviewed by the DEI head person at the school, and then he had to vouch for us, and then she had to vouch for us. So there's a whole negotiation happening, and I just think, no, I'm just a smart kid. They're going to accept me. Not only do they have to vouch for me, then I have to be on financial aid. So now there's another conversation about money. On top of that, being like, well, I don't test well. I've never tested well. And so my SSATs to get into private school were really, really low. But everything else was stellar. But that still was a really high determining factor of whether or not you were going to succeed. So if they're looking at me, I'm still a gamble. I'm a gamble kid. Yeah. And so I think about what that meant already before even walking into the building. Now I'm walking into the building and I'm told I'm Black. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. But there's a different intensity around the word, the race, how they talk about it. It changes. Yeah. But for white people who don't see, who may not identify as queer, who are just straight cisgender people who are unaware that they have a savior complex, but they're in educational spaces, like I'm always trying to understand how to have a conversation with them, because I'll purposely have the conversation about race because I need to know where you fall. Yeah. If they're like, no, I'm just here to help the community, what does that mean? Yeah. I always start with, what does that mean? I don't feel like I'm making it really far when it comes to straight cis white people. I feel like when I talk to queer white people, I'm getting somewhere because they're like, I know what a different feels like. Yeah. Or even when I've met white people from the South who live in the North, they're like, this is different. I feel different. I met teachers from Tennessee, or they're like, I don't know how you do it up here, right? Or even people, I was a co-teacher with a white straight man, but at the time he had an Asian girlfriend. So even there was a start. So how do you have conversations with straight white people who are like you can tell they're at the beginning? Yeah.
So I think it's just that I think it's like conversation after conversation. Whiteness was not created in my lifetime. So it's my entire lifetime, and it's generations of my family buying into whiteness. We shed our Prussianness, we shed our Persianness, we shed our Irishness to get to be white. And so one conversation's not going to do it. 5 are not going to do it. It's like the constantness of it. So I think it's that. You know, one of the things I studied for my master's degree was white racial identity development, because I had this exact question, like, we got to move ourselves as a people in this generation way more than we've been moved before. So, like, how do we do that? Yep. And one of the stages that we go through is, like, first we're like, la, 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 everything's fine. I don't see color, la, la, la. And then we'll have some moment where we're like, oh, shit, racism exists. Like, this is a system, right? I'm trying to sound a little blonde as I'm saying this, because that's kind of like how it rolls. And in that moment, that stage, we sort of dissociate and go back to this even more racist way of being because the way we've thought things are and the way we're now coming to understand they are is so upsetting that we have to deny it. So this will be like where we do all the like the bullshit victim blaming stuff. Like, well, they did that to themselves, or if only they had. And that for me, like when I hear that, even though what I want to be is like, shut the F up, like, you know, and read somebody, what I understand is that moment of dissonance is where somebody's spirit is actually saying what's happening here is not okay. And so that for me is the open door to be with someone and to not jump on them in that moment. Now, it depends what setting we're in. Like if we're in a very multiracial setting, like I need to speak up and say something to have whatever narrative they're putting out and be like, that's not okay. But I want to do it in a way that doesn't actually, if I'm invested in them, slam them, because I want to talk with them about why, like, what are you feeling? Not what are you thinking, but like, what are you actually feeling? Because something is going on where some part of your system gets that this whole thing we're caught up in is fundamentally wrong. And that's why you're having this big emotional reaction, or this big visceral reaction, or this need to like disassociate or step back and revert to a more racist way of being. And that's not the work of BIPOC folks to do. Like, I want to be super clear. I'm talking to other white folks here. But, like, that's where we've got to step in with each other, because that's the moment where our spirits are saying, what is happening here is not okay. And be with other white folks around that who can say, yep, I felt that way. Yep, I've said that thing too. Yep, I wanted to have that reaction. But here's where I did something different. Because how many times growing up did your mom talk with you about what it meant to be Black?
Oh, my whole life.
Right. I cannot remember a single conversation I had with either of my parents, both of whom were white, once explicitly about what it meant to be white. And that is not a unique experience for white people. When I do workshops.
No way.
So serious.
Your entire life?
So serious. I mean, there may have been one that I had forgotten, like, but my mom had lived on a Native American reservation. We got the newspaper from there. She told me about her friends' experiences. The family we were closest to in our neighborhood was a white mom and a Black dad. And my mom would tell me stories about things that John experienced as a Black man. One of my uncles was born in a Japanese internment concentration camp during World War II. Like, his mom would talk to me about stuff. So I had a sense that BIPOC folks had a different reality than I did.
Yep.
But no one ever talked about it. It was like, Lisa, here's what it means to be white.
In your
Here's
world.
what whiteness is. Here's what our ancestors did to create whiteness. Here's never. And it is the rare white person I encountered that had explicit conversations as a young person with other white people about what it meant to be white. So we don't even have that skill, let alone the muscle to lean in with each other around, what are you doing in this moment? Why is this stuff coming out of your mouth? Why are you acting this way? We don't know how to do that. And so for me, like, that's what it's about. It's having those conversations over and over again, and then pushing people and inviting people to push me. And when they push me, I have to receive that with, thank you for telling me, I'm going to do different now, because it's got to be followed up by action. It can't just be the talk.
Thank you, Lisa, for sitting in the chair and sharing your stories. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This was like such a treat. I love what you're doing with the podcast, the chair, with like so many spaces in which you're moving. And I am so grateful for the day I found your handouts on the copier and sat down at lunch.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share stories in the chair.